You're Elon Musk, right? Mind showing us how calculus fits into building rockets? The crowd at MIT's lecture hall chuckled. Dr. Evelyn Harper stood on stage, chalk in hand, a smug smile on her face. Her tone was playful but sharp. Elon, seated in the back in a simple jacket, looked up slowly, his eyes calm, unreadable. The room had been buzzing all morning with coffee, projectors, and academic egos. Evelyn, a well-known liberal calculus professor, had spent the last 30 minutes explaining why tech entrepreneurs don't really understand math. Then she spotted him. Now all eyes were on Elon. She tapped the chalkboard. "Since you're here, maybe you'd like to solve this one." She had scribbled a complicated integral involving exponential functions and trigonometry. The audience shifted in their seats. Phones came out. Was she really challenging him? Elon stood up slowly. "Sure," he said casually. "Happy to." His boots echoed as he walked down the aisle. He took the chalk with a quiet confidence. "This equation," he said, glancing at the board, "actually models part of a low-thrust orbital insertion." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, arms crossed. "Interesting interpretation." Elon began writing. Not fast, not showy, but precise. Elegant. Each line simplified the chaos until, finally, a clear orbital path emerged. Gasps filled the room. A student near the front whispered, "He's right." Evelyn blinked, stunned. "Math," Elon said, handing her the chalk bag, "is the language of the universe." And just like that, the hall erupted. Cameras flashed. Students roared. And Evelyn Harper realized she hadn't just challenged a guest. She had challenged a mind built to explore other planets. The only sound in the room was the rhythmic tap of chalk on the board. Elon's hand moved with calm precision, unraveling the problem layer by layer. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't showing off. He was teaching. Students leaned forward. Phones hovered mid-air, recording. Evelyn stood still, her arms still crossed, but her fingers twitched. The equation she had written wasn't simple. It included nested functions, polar transformations, and non-linear coefficients, the kind of math that usually silenced undergrads. But Elon? He talked through it like he was narrating a bedtime story. "This step reduces the noise from the angular acceleration model," he said softly. "Then we substitute this identity, saves time during simulations." In 2 minutes, the equation was solved. In 3, he had explained how it directly related to optimizing fuel burn during a Mars transfer orbit. When he stepped away, the board looked like art, neatly written logic that curved like a trajectory through space. A voice from the front. "Wait, this is correct. I just plugged it in. It's right." More students checked their devices. Murmurs turned to stunned silence. Then, applause. Evelyn didn't clap. She couldn't. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes searched for a flaw. But there wasn't one. "You memorized that?" she asked, her voice dry. Elon shrugged. "I've done it before. A lot." Evelyn forced a smile. "Well, impressive." Elon turned back toward the seats. "Anyone can learn it, but most people never get challenged by a calculus professor at a live event." The crowd laughed. Evelyn didn't. For the first time, she wasn't the one holding the chalk. By the time Elon left the stage, the video had already hit the internet. A student's phone caught the entire thing. Evelyn's challenge, Elon's smooth walk to the board, and the flawless solution. The caption read, "Elon Musk silences a calculus professor live." Within minutes, it went viral. X exploded with comments. "Legend! Bro just calculated Mars in front of a PhD. MIT lecture or SpaceX masterclass?" In the lecture hall, Evelyn stood frozen near the podium. Students didn't crowd around her like they usually did. They were too busy watching the replay, on loop. She bent down to gather her papers. Her fingers trembled. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered to herself. A student nearby glanced at her and whispered to a friend, "I think she underestimated him." Elon, meanwhile, remained calm. He grabbed his coat, nodded politely to a few students, and walked toward the exit. On his way out, he paused and turned to Evelyn. "You're a good teacher," he said gently, "but you don't need to prove you're the smartest in the room." She blinked, caught off guard. "Were you trying to embarrass me?" He shook his head. "No, I just love math." And with that, he was gone. Back in her office, Evelyn sat at her desk. The walls were lined with awards and degrees, but all she could see was her own reflection in the black screen of her computer. "Maybe," she muttered, "I forgot why I started teaching." And somewhere in her inbox, Elon's card sat unread. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence. 3 days of watching herself get tagged in videos she didn't want to see. Evelyn Harper sat in her office, surrounded by degrees and dusty chalkboards. MIT students still whispered as they passed her door. Some giggled. Others looked at her with pity. She stared at Elon's business card. It had been sitting on her desk like a challenge. Not a public one, but personal. Finally, she picked it up and dialed. The line clicked. "Hello?" Elon's voice came through, calm, curious. "Mr. Musk, this is Dr. Harper, Evelyn from the lecture." "I remember," he said warmly. I wanted to say..." She hesitated, then closed her eyes. "I was wrong. I underestimated you. And maybe I forgot what it means to be a student." There was a pause. Not awkward, just honest. "Apology accepted," Elon said, "but I did not need it." "I did," Evelyn replied. "I've spent years teaching people to question everything. I guess I stopped doing that myself." Elon was quiet for a moment, then said, "Want to visit SpaceX? No cameras, no audience, just rockets and math." Evelyn let out a surprised laugh. "You'd actually let me in?" "I don't hold grudges," Elon said. "I hold notebooks." That made her smile. "All right," she said, a little more herself. "Then I'll bring mine." And just like that, the professor who thought she had all the answers was ready to start learning again. Bulum Vavj, the collaboration. The SpaceX floor wasn't quiet. It buzzed with screens, engines, and minds in motion. Evelyn stood beside Elon at a massive digital display, where trajectories curved like constellations in motion. "This variable here," she muttered, pointing. "If we apply a polar transformation, we could cut computing time by half." Elon nodded, impressed. "Exactly what I was thinking." Weeks had passed since the lecture. Since then, Evelyn had made a quiet but determined leap, visiting SpaceX weekly, sitting in on simulations, scribbling formulas like a grad student again. One afternoon, a breakthrough came. Together, they developed a new orbital calculation method, faster, more accurate, and efficient enough to reshape launch protocols. When the formula held up in real-time engine simulations, the control room erupted. "You two just made history," one engineer whispered. News spread fast. X exploded again, but this time, the headline read, "Elon Musk and Professor Harper team up for space math revolution." Back at MIT, students flooded Evelyn's next lecture. One raised his hand. "Dr. Harper, is it true you helped design the new trajectory models?" Evelyn smiled. "With a little help, yes." "From Elon Musk?" She grinned. "Let's just say, I stopped lecturing and started listening." Later that day, Elon handed her a small rocket model with their formula etched on the side. "Call it a trophy," he said. Evelyn held it carefully, eyes glinting. "From Challenger to co-pilot," she said, half joking, but Elon just nodded seriously. "Best seat in the galaxy." Bulum 6, the lesson that lasted. A year later, the equation they built together was being used in nearly every SpaceX launch. The algorithm had reduced fuel waste by 17%, saving millions and optimizing every mission's trajectory. But that wasn't what Evelyn was most proud of. What mattered more was who she had become. Back at MIT, she stood before a packed lecture hall. But something had changed. She no longer stood behind the podium like a shield. She stood beside the board, marker in hand, sleeves rolled up, alive in the moment. One student raised his hand. "Dr. Harper, what's the most important math lesson you've ever learned?" Evelyn smiled. "That math doesn't care how smart you are, only how curious." She paused, then added, "And that being wrong isn't failure. It's the first step to getting it right." After class, she sat in her office, sunlight warming her desk. On the shelf behind her sat the small SpaceX rocket model Elon had given her. Next to it, a framed photo of the two of them, both smiling, covered in chalk dust and numbers. A message was etched in the frame, "To Evelyn, who reminded us that learning never stops." Just then, an alert popped up on her screen. New email. Subject line, "Invitation, Mars Trajectory Panel." She laughed to herself. From public embarrassment to international recognition, from ego to empathy, all because one man didn't fight back. He solved the problem and reminded her that the real lesson wasn't about math at all. It was about humility, curiosity, and the courage to grow.
If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Subscribe for more inspiring stories.